How do you make $300 billion by selling liquor? Well, the answer is by getting the CCP or the Chinese Communist Party addicted to it and then charging them a fortune. This probably sounds quite daunting and borderline impossible, but that's precisely what a company called Kweichow Moutai has managed to do. That name probably doesn't ring a bell, but Kweichow Moutai is actually the 25th largest company in the world with a market cap of $307 billion. That's more than Pepsi and Coca-Cola, which means that Kweichow Moutai is the largest beverage company in the world. In fact, they're almost the largest food company in the world as well, only beaten out by Nestle. They're also the second largest Chinese company, only beaten out by Tencent themselves. This is no doubt quite impressive, but when you take a look at how much Moutai costs, it all makes sense. A single bottle of Moutai costs anywhere between $300 to $44,000, depending on the age. For a 500 milliliter bottle, this translates to 60 cents to $88 per milliliter. For perspective, even human blood only costs 39 cents per milliliter. And that's just normal Moutai. It's not uncommon to hear about vintage Moutai selling for more than $1 million. This has allowed Kweichow to grow to $20 billion in revenue and $13 billion in net profit every single year, with a net margin of 53%. But it wasn't always like this. In fact, just 20 years ago, the entire company was barely pulling in $200 million worth of revenue and $75 million worth of profit. This means that within a matter of 20 years, Kweichow has managed to grow 100 to 200x. And this is very much reflected in the stock price, which has run up as much as 290x. Even if you bought Google at IPO, you would have only gotten a 50x return. So how did Kweichow Moutai go from being a boutique distillery to being the world's largest beverage company with a drink that tastes like rotten cabbage? Well, the answer is a bit of deception, some powerful connections, and a lot of brilliant marketing. So here's the insane story of Kweichow Moutai. Taking a look back, Kweichow is by no means a heritage company. In fact, the current version wasn't even created till the end of 1999, but the same cannot be said about Moutai, which according to some sources dates back over 2,000 years to 135 BC. This was during the rise of the Han Dynasty, not to be confused with the Huns from Mulan. The Han Dynasty is one of the strongest dynasties in China's history, having ruled over much of modern-day China for over 4 centuries. Many of the traditions and cultures that we now associate with China today can be traced back to the Hans. So it wouldn't be surprising if Moutai was also popularized by the Hans. The story goes that a diplomat from the Western Han Dynasty named Tang Meng would travel to an independent kingdom named Nanyu back in 135 BC. During this trip, Tang would apparently enjoy a drink which he brought back to the Han Dynasty. And according to legends and Kweichow's own history page, this is the roots of Moutai. But what if I told you that all of that was just a facade, a legend popularized by Kweichow for marketing purposes? You see, according to historical scholars and records, there was indeed a man named Tang Meng who traveled to Nanyu back in 135 BC. There's even evidence that he did enjoy a drink there, but this drink was not Moutai. It was Zhujiang. So the reality is that Moutai is nowhere near that ancient, but it's in Kweichow's best interest to convince people that it is. A lot of the appeal of Moutai is that it's what the greatest Chinese people of history drank, and it's the drink of China. This ideology and Chinese pride is what really sells the drink, because the drink itself is vile and putrid, and I can't understate that. In fact, here are some reviews. Imagine rotten cabbage, ethyl alcohol, and paint thinner blended and strained. The first time I tried Moutai, it tasted like engine oil. I've never met anybody, even at the heights of alcoholic derangement, prepared to admit that they actually liked the taste. None of these reviews are that surprising though when you consider that Moutai is 53% alcohol. So yeah, Moutai is a terrible tasting drink that has nothing to do with the Han Dynasty. The real roots of Moutai actually go back to the much more modern Qing dynasty, who were in power between 1644 and 1911. Sometime during this period, some northern Chinese distillers would apparently introduce some advanced techniques to create a distinctive type of baijiu known as Moutai. But again, this is mostly just fluff. The reality is that the invention of Moutai was unceremonious and largely unknown because it wasn't really an invention to begin with. These northern Chinese distillers were simply making classic liquor using the climate and ingredients they had access to. It just so happened that this climate and these ingredients gave the liquor a unique taste, which has since become the iconic taste of Moutai. So while Kweichow likes to claim that Moutai is some sort of magic juice with a 2,000-year history, Moutai is actually just some random local drink with a terrible taste. But none of this would hold back Moutai in the 1900s. Like with many popular products, the popularity of Moutai has more to do with optics than intrinsic value. And the optics of Moutai can be traced back to 1915 to the Panama Pacific International Exposition. This exposition was held in San Francisco and is one of the most monumental events in American history. 9 years before the exposition, San Francisco experienced the worst earthquake in its history, estimated to be a magnitude of 7.9. This exposition was designed to show that not just San Francisco, but all of America was willing to fight through and recover from anything. As such, this exposition would be marketed like never before and attracted a whopping 18 million people. The exposition showcased some of the most advanced tech of the time, like America's first transcontinental telephone call. In one corner of this grand exposition, though, there was an exhibit for Chinese Moutai. While nowhere near as impressive as a transcontinental telephone call, Moutai was no doubt a heavyweight when it came to hard liquor. The aroma and taste was something that the rest of the world had never experienced. This not only made them popular at the exposition, but allowed them to straight up win a gold medal, establishing China's presence on the world stage. This was the first time that Moutai was linked to Chinese pride, but it was by no means the last. The event that would certify Moutai as a hood classic was the Chinese Civil War between 1927 and 1949. This war was fought between the Republic of China backed by the United States and the Chinese Communist Party backed by the Soviet Union. The army of the CCP is referred to as the People's Liberation Army, and the story goes that Moutai is what led this army to victory. Apparently, the Red Army soldiers drank Moutai to lift their spirits and disinfect their wounds during the Battle of Chishuai River. This battle turned out to be the turning point of the bloody 22-year-long war, leading to the CCP's victory. And as this battle became legendary, so did Moutai. Now, to be clear, we don't even know if these soldiers actually used Moutai, but that's the story that's propagated by Kweichow Moutai and the CCP. After the war, the CCP would double down on this image, advertising that Moutai was the favorite drink of the Chinese leader, Mao Zedong. But it wasn't just Mao who enjoyed this drink either. Pretty soon, Moutai became quite popular with foreign leaders as well. Likely the most notable instance of this was with President Richard Nixon in 1972. Thanks to the Cold War, China and the US were basically sworn enemies up until this point. So this meeting between Richard Nixon and the Chinese leader Zhou Enlai was very much unprecedented. And to celebrate this monumental event in Beijing, the CCP would of course serve Moutai. We don't know what President Nixon thought about the drink, but his Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, was much more vocal. He said, "I think if we drink enough Moutai, we can solve anything." This event cemented Moutai as not just the drink of the CCP, but the drink of the elite, leading us to the modern-day Kweichow Moutai. Over the next few decades, Moutai transitioned from being a pride thing to being a status symbol. It was the drink of millionaires and billionaires, and if you were hosting someone important, serving them Moutai was the standard, but there was no standard brand. While all Moutai came from the city of Moutai, there were several brands that you could choose from up until 1999. In 1999, the CCP would consolidate all of the most notable Moutai distilleries into one state-owned enterprise called Kweichow Moutai. While this did create a monopoly, it wasn't a very big deal. It's not like Apple and Google were merging. Rather, it was a bunch of local distilleries who barely had a combined revenue of $200 million. But then, how did such a small operation become the world's largest beverage company? Well, the answer isn't rocket science. One look at China's GDP graph will explain a lot. Back in 1999, China's GDP stood at $1 trillion. Today, China's GDP stands at $17.7 trillion, meaning that China's GDP has grown 17x. For perspective, America's GDP has only grown about 2.5x during the same time period. So, Kweichow Moutai has acted as a sort of index for Chinese wealth and the power of the CCP. In fact, the vast majority of Moutai is consumed by government officials. In 2012, it was estimated that half of all sales came from government-related customers. President Xi has tried to fight against this. One of the first things he did after coming to power in 2012 was crack down on the spending of CCP officials. This did momentarily reduce the price of Moutai, but it has since recovered, which just goes to show how powerful the brand really is. But it's not all good news. For one, Moutai is only relevant within China. In fact, 97% of all Kweichow's revenue comes from China alone. While Westerners do often try the drink when visiting China, they rarely pick it up as a habit because it tastes like drinking liquid razor blades. Not to mention the price. But it's not just Westerners who are shying away from Moutai either. China's youth is also not so fond of the drink, primarily because of the taste and association with older generations. Currently, the core demographic for the liquor is 40 to 60-year-old men. So only time will tell if Moutai will survive through generations, but as for the imminent future, it's not going anywhere. In fact, in late 2022, Kweichow briefly overtook Tencent to become China's largest company, period. So there's really no question that Kweichow Moutai has basically become the expensive alcoholic Coca-Cola of China, and that won't be changing anytime soon. In the end, it's easy to dismiss Kweichow Moutai as some sort of bougie company that sells ridiculously priced liquor to China's elite. But when we peel back the layers, it's clear that Kweichow Moutai, and more specifically Moutai itself, is much more than just that. It's really a testament to the power of branding. Objectively speaking, Moutai has virtually nothing going for it. It's a byproduct of a random Chinese city's climate and resources. But through the power of narrative, storytelling, and branding, Kweichow Moutai has made Moutai into a Chinese icon. They were able to tie together random events from over 2,000 years ago to modern events that hit close to home, like the Chinese Civil War and Mao Zedong. And while there may be a longer-term trend away from Moutai, just like there is with soda, Moutai is by no means going anywhere but up anytime soon. And that is how you make $300 billion by getting the CCP drunk. Would you ever try Moutai for $300? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you would like to support our branding. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.